several years ago, Joanne and I think this was maybe the mid-2000 or around 2015 or so, Joanne and I were in Frostburg, Maryland, at the University of Maryland there, the Frostburg campus, attending the sessions of Baltimore Yearly Meeting. For those of you not accustomed to Quaker jargon, a yearly meeting is a collection of local or monthly meetings, which is what this congregation is, usually located in the same geographical area, who gather once a year, hence the term yearly meeting, to discuss and decide their shared ministries and concerns. Just so you know, the definition of a Quaker is someone who won't attend their own yearly meeting, but will drive 450 miles to attend someone else's. And so that's what we did that summer. We went out there to Baltimore Yearly Meeting, and we had a wonderful time. And there was a free afternoon, and after looking at an atlas, I discovered we were only 50 miles from Falling Water, what some believe to be the most beautiful home in America. It was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. So off we went to Falling Water. The house was designed in 1935 by Frank Lloyd Wright for Edgar and Lillian Kaufman, who were the owners of the Kaufman department store in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They had owned property along the Bear Run River for several decades and would spend their summers camping beside a waterfall on Bear Run River, and eventually decided to hire Frank Lloyd Wright to build a home for them. When they first saw the blueprints that Wright had drawn, they were upset. They had asked him to place the home downstream of the waterfalls so they could view the water. But the blueprints had the home placed in the midst of the waterfall, integrated among the water, the boulders, and the century-old trees. When the Kaufmans expressed their disappointment with his design, Wright told them, "I want you to live with the waterfall, not just to look at it, but for it to become an integral part of your lives." And of course, if you've been there, if you've been to Falling Water or even seen a picture of it, you know its beauty is based on its integration. The house and nature are woven seamlessly together, each one complementing the other in a beautiful synthesis of design. Wright later said, when interviewed about the house, that no house should ever be on a hill or on anything. It should be of the hill, belonging to it. We've been talking about Quaker qualities, kind of reframing our Quaker testimonies. We've discussed equality as democratic discernment, peace as consistent compassion, simplicity as generosity, and today I want to speak about integrity as integration, by which I mean all the elements of our lives fitting seamlessly together until they become an example of unified beauty. The Quaker testimony of integrity is not just about telling the truth. Our testimony of integrity is about living a life of integration so that there is no daylight between what we say and believe and do. They are all of the same piece. They are integrated. Think for a moment of our disappointment when someone regularly proclaims their devotion to Jesus one moment, and then the next moment treats their fellow humans terribly. The disconnect we experience in that moment is because we see in their lives a lack of integration. There is a chasm between what they say and how they act, and we recognize this disconnection and we find it troubling, even jarring. Isn't this what appalls us today about the prevalence of Christian nationalism? Christianity is a global movement, a universal philosophy, transcending borders and boundaries, embracing the world. But in Christian nationalism, it becomes a regional religion, a national religion confined to and controlled by a political party or ruling class. We are rightly troubled by that, seeing a disconnect between the principles of Jesus and the conduct of his followers. We recognize this lack of integration, which is, at its heart, is a lack of integrity. And if we are mindful, and if we are self-aware, we recognize in our own lives, don't we, these moments and places of disconnection. Paul spoke about this in his letter to the Romans when he wrote, I don't understand my own actions. I do not do what I want. I do the very thing I hate. We all know that feeling inwardly. We all have experienced that. This disconnection, this lack of integration, and are troubled by it, especially when we notice it in ourselves. Oh, boy, I had an experience about that just recently. For years now, Joanne and I have had an extra car, a third car, which we kept because when we got a new car, we thought, well, we'll just keep the third one in case any friends or family ever need to borrow it. So that's what we do with it. It has nearly 200,000 miles on it, and I fear is close to giving up the ghost. So when I saw an advertisement last week for a 2007 Lincoln Town Car at Andy Moore Nissan with only 80,000 miles on it, I thought, that is the car for me. So I went and I drove it. Beautiful car, one owner, non-smoker, but when I sat in it, I immediately felt 110 years old. And so I decided not to buy it. Unfortunately, I'd already gotten to know the used car salesman, a nice young man named Tony. I'd spoken on the phone several times with him. He told me about his parents and his fiance and how he was saving money for college so he could become a doctor and help poor people. I mean, this was just a wonderful, great kid. So when I decided not to buy the car, I just couldn't bring myself to say anything to him. And so I waited until he went to the bathroom and then got out of there as quickly as I could. I fled the place rather than telling Tony I was no longer interested in the car. I didn't want to hurt his feelings and ruin his plans for his life. Well, you've heard it said, and sometimes people my age often talk about how younger people don't know how to work these days and all of this, but that is not true of Tony because he has called me every day. And he did for the next 3 days, every day calling me, asking me. So nice. Hello, Mr. Gulley, this is Tony. How are you today? How is Mrs. Gulley? Tony, call me Phil. And Joanne, just Joanne, and we're fine, thank you. Well, I'd rather call you Mr. Gulley if that's okay. I was just calling to let you know the car is still available and I'd be happy to deliver it to your home if it's too hard for you and Mrs. Gulley to get out. Tony was so nice. This kid was so nice that the third time he called, I invited he and his fiancée to our house for Easter dinner. That's how nice this kid was. I was telling Joanne about it. She said, you have to tell him. You have to tell him that we don't want that car. I said, he wants to be a doctor, Joanne, and help poor people. That is not our responsibility, she said. You know, I love my wife, but sometimes she can be ruthless. But I knew she was right. I knew she was right that I had to tell Tony the truth. He phoned the next day. We chatted a little bit. And then he asked me if I was still interested in the car. He'd been saving it for me. Other people had wanted it. He had told them no. I said, Tony, there's something you need to be aware of. I was going to buy that car for an older person because technically speaking, I was older than I had been the day I drove it. And they've told me they no longer want it, which is true. I no longer wanted it. I said they've even been told they should stop driving, which is also true. Joanne has been telling me that now for several years, that I should stop driving. So here I am. Talk about this disconnect. Here I am, a minister of the gospel of Jesus, a responsibility. I know it doesn't always seem that way, but it's a responsibility I try to take seriously, and I shaded the truth rather than speak it. I did this to spare Tony. Did I ask for your comments? Don't get him started too. Oh, Lord. Then I read this quote this week. You know, here I am wanting to be nice to Tony, and I read this quote, that it is better to be slapped with the truth than kissed with a lie. Better to be slapped with the truth than kissed with a lie. We live with this need always in our lives, friends, to weave our lives into a seamless garment when what we say and believe and do are one and the same no matter what, to integrate our lives so that what we love is what we do. So what we believe, so that what we believe becomes our first impulse and not our eventual impulse. Not just living near the truth, within viewing distance of it, but living in it and being of it.